The day you learn to love yourself is when, instead of just constantly blaming yourself for all your failures, you can pat yourself in the back after all that effort, after all that heartache you went through. You didn't hit a certain expectation or you didn't make a certain goal. You can tell yourself that you did all you can, you put into work to get closer to that, you grew a lot because of this experience. Allow yourself to grieve. Try to come to peace with it and give yourself the right to keep going with whatever you're doing. Hey guys, it's Toniko Pantoja, and today I want to talk about not being good enough. In my past history, I've been rejected from schools, internship offers, job offers, and other opportunities that I wish I got to keep. I've even gotten let go from jobs because, to their eyes, I wasn't able to maintain a standard. Being accepted based on my skills or credibility meant that I had the right to belong to a certain community. But sometimes things don't happen that way and you just don't make the cut. So talking about my personal experience, I would get notes on what I could work on, ranging from draftsmanship to creative notes to professionalism. Whether it's for school or for work, whenever I tried to adjust these notes, considering the high amount of effort that I put into them from my perspective, it wasn't good enough for them. Either I would need more time to get to a level they were expecting for me, or I just wasn't the right fit for them. Either way, a rejection or a failure, it feels like a gut to the punch. My self-confidence would be affected, and my motivation to work on anything, including personal stuff, would dwindle. It isn't a new feeling, and it extends beyond the work. It goes into personal life, personal relationships. It's like you disappointed someone, or you disappointed yourself. And I do think it creates a feeling of loneliness, especially when you're the only one that's being pushed out. I remember there was one time I was the only one that didn't get an internship or didn't get a job, and all my other friends would, and it kind of changed the dynamic on how they would talk to me, and possibly changed the dynamic on how I would talk to them. One time I had a conversation with a coworker of mine, and we were talking about my history, my past experiences with productions, whether they were good productions, toxic productions, and my overall reputation as someone who uploads to YouTube and as someone that a lot of people look up to. And that because of it, people have a certain high expectation of me, and when they realize that I don't hit those expectations, they see me differently. I sometimes wonder that because of my involvement with a few prolific productions, having a YouTube channel, and being involved with the community, I think what happens is that there's this unrealistic expectation of me. And look, I've had my share of both failures and successes, praises and criticism. Sometimes the criticisms feel much more threatening because, well, maybe it activates the fight or flight feeling. And maybe as an anxious person, you want to try to solve that problem as soon as possible. Maybe that's why failures feel so much bigger, or they feel like stains in your life or stains in your career or your craft, making it easy to forget the good things that did happen. I've been in productions where it started really well in the beginning, and then towards the end, it just left a sour taste in my mouth, and I could only remember the sour taste in my mouth, and sometimes forgetting the good things from that experience. That's something that's super easy to forget. But look, this stuff extends beyond animation. A few years ago, I was healing from a very toxic experience in my personal life. I'm not going to get too much into that, but I remember being ridiculously hard on myself, blaming myself on a lot of things. There were times where I would not sleep and I would not eat, and I lost a lot of weight. Now, over time, as I grew older, the day you learn to love yourself is when, despite things not going your way, and instead of blaming yourself all the time, you can pat yourself in the back and tell yourself you did what you could, you learned about yourself from the overall experience, and you give yourself the right to continue for the best. The thing about toxicity is that it can be addictive. Like, toxicity is when you're constantly shamed for something, no matter how hard you try, and you're trying to fix that. You're trying to swallow up your pride, you're trying to coexist, you're trying to do things their way, but you can also end up compromising your own dignity. And when you make a mistake, they make a big deal out of it and they blame you for life for it. They may shun you for it and push you away. And when I realized that was happening, I had to walk away. And I've been in situations where I had that experience in productions. I just had to step away. And I know that I don't want to talk too much about the industry, but there's a lot of two-faced people where they compliment or they appreciate the work that you put into something, and then later down the line, you hear in the grapevines that they talk shit about you. And that's when you also start to realize that you don't have any control on how people feel about you. So the only real genuine advice I can give, especially if you feel like you're not good enough or you feel like you're a failure, is that you're only human. And if you did put into effort, you also have to look at the effort that you put into it, because that could be measured into a cup. You know, how much time and effort you tried to adjust something, addressing criticism, addressing weaknesses in your work, and how much it affected or changed your workflow for the better. The important thing is that you learn something for yourself that will make you better for the future, even if it doesn't really hit the goals that you were trying to get. The important thing is, did you grow out of it? We can worry about expectations and that kind of stuff later on, but did you grow out of that experience? And if you can, it's called potential. One big piece of advice that I would give is I would avoid blaming. So my failures have led me to negative emotions such as anger, confusion, sadness, and regret. My failures has made me frustrated with myself and others related to it. Now, I remember being told my frustrations are often misplaced, and I think it's okay to be frustrated even if it is misplaced, because frustration is a raw emotion. However, I think frustration and blame are two different things. I remember someone was trying to tell me that that's a very contradictory statement, but hear me out. I could be frustrated at a boss for letting me go, or frustrated at a teacher for being hard on me and giving me low grades, and then I would be frustrated at myself for not being good enough. Now, am I going to blame those parties for my quote-unquote failures? It's a waste of time to even do that. I'm frustrated at a lot of things in my life, which led to certain failures, but I don't blame them. I was given a really cool opportunity, but I chose the other, but then that other choice that I made didn't go too well. I don't blame myself for making that choice, and I don't blame others involved in that choice, because I learned a lot from that experience. I learned a lot about myself and things that I would consider later down the line in the future, what to watch out for. It's a lesson. I would avoid generalizing. So an example of generalizing is, like, let's say I work in 1 or 2 productions. It turned out toxic, and maybe it turned out as a stain in my career. Then I would paint a whole picture saying that everyone in the industry or the industry sucks, and then that would lead to me saying, man, animation just sucks. But that's not really true. And what could be closer to reality, and the good news is I could say some productions or some people in the industry are really shitty and they suck, but not all of them. There are some great ones, because that's true. Here's another one. Let's say I left a production that left a sour taste in my mouth. Towards the end, it wasn't a great experience. But I also remember a lot of good things from that experience, a lot of great positive things that have been a good part in my life. I think if you generalize, it kind of affects the mindset you have and the outlook you have for yourself and for the work, and it can make someone really pessimistic and cynical to the point that they don't want to see anyone else's point of view, or they're just less motivated. Now, when it comes to getting good or reaching a standard or hitting a criteria, sometimes you may have to accept the fact that you may be a slow learner. For me, for example, I'm a real slow learner. It takes me a very long time to understand a concept and to apply it into practice. When it comes to things like drawing and animation, that's pretty much a lifetime study. Some people tried 5 times to get into their dream animation school, only by their 5th time to finally get accepted. There are things in my skill set and in my life that I never got to practice or never got to focus on in the past, and now I'm making up for it. I mean, there are ways to speed up this process, like having an actual mentor to point out things that you can work on in every step, or be in a circumstance, an environment, or a restriction that forces you to work on that one weakness. It doesn't mean that you'll never hit a standard or you'll never hit a quote-unquote be good enough. It's just that you may need more time, or you need to put way more effort just for yourself. So, as someone who has faced many failures, heavy and constant criticism, rejections because I couldn't meet a standard, I totally get it. It sucks. Now, it doesn't mean my whole life and my career is only about failures, because it's had a fair share of wins and success stories as well. So let's say you failed or you weren't good enough and you were given reasons of why you weren't good enough. See what's in your power to try and adjust that so it can make yourself and your work better for the future, regardless of someone else's expectation of you. The way I like to see failure stories, it's like research and development, and that's something that I would love to talk about later down the line. Anyways, that's all. Bye. Hand-drawn animation, or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end, have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.